Recording in progress. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring up the slides that we're going to cover real quick.
Mark, would you like to do introductions first before we begin?
Yeah, I was looking at around the room here. So
I think everyone's in at this point.
yes, I think so too. I know one person's dialed in 514, I think from Quebec. Yeah. So I'm not sure with everyone, I can see names except for that person.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you want to pause the recording so the intro is included in the recording?
Recording. And then I will do a quick share screen. Challenge with having multiple screens is making sure that I'm sharing with the right PowerPoint. I should have it here. Let me know when you can see this PowerPoint. Can everyone see that okay? Cool.
Yeah, I can see the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Great. So basically, this is a guide for moving to Canada. And again, as I said earlier, that we'll share this recording with you. We'll share the PowerPoint with you. So don't worry so much about taking notes. I will try and stop every couple slides to answer questions. To give you a perspective, so I'm an American who has moved to Canada twice. So I moved to Canada to do university. I went to get my MBA in London, Ontario. So I lived in Canada 2 years as a student, came right back to California where I'm from. A year later, I moved to Canada, worked in venture capital and the Canadian tech company, then moved back to the US. So I have the perspective of basically, I realized moving to a country is extremely challenging. Just even though we're moving from the US to Canada, there are plenty of differences. So one thing we wanted to do in this process is pull from the knowledge that I've had or that anyone's had that crossed the border of there are things you need to know when you move to Canada just to make the process easier. That is the whole goal of this presentation, walking you through all the steps that it takes. Again, some things will come across as very easy. Feel free to, in the chat, either if you have a comment or you want to jump in with a question, please stop me anywhere along the way if something needs clarification. In terms of our agenda, all of you are coming into Canada under Global Talent Stream Work Permit. I will walk through that really quickly and also give a disclaimer. I'm not an immigration lawyer, but we have access to very good immigration lawyers in Canada. Some of you will have met some of them already. I will share their information on the screen. For those of you coming from the US, one of the reasons people leave the US is because permanent residency / green card is extremely difficult or impossible to get. Canada does it completely opposite. They make it very easy to get permanent residency. Then we're going to cover what it takes to work in Canada. Social insurance number is, if you're in the US, it's like a social security card. We'll cover Canadian healthcare, we'll cover housing, bank accounts, credit card, mobile phone, getting paid in Canada, arriving in Canada. We're going to cover all of those. In terms of the GTS work permit, unlike if any of you went through the challenge of getting an H-1B, Canada again makes it very simple. It's a 2-year work permit. It is renewable. It has the name of the company that sponsored you. So whoever is your sponsoring company, that you're tied to that company. That again, it's a 2-year renewable work permit. If Path to Canada is bringing you in, which is sharing the confirmation for Josh Schocknow, if Syndesis is bringing you in, there's 2 contacts here, either for Daniel or Rabia. One thing to keep in mind is what we always recommend is you've got the work permit, it gets you into Canada. What that work permit does for any of you who are coming in who are doing express entry for permanent residence, the work permit alone gives you 50 points. Every year you work in Canada, you get more points. So what a lot of people do is they wait until they're in Canada, maybe a couple months in, then they start the express entry process. They right away say in Canada, working. Again, we recommend talk to an immigration lawyer, the ones that are listed here, have them help you work on the strategy. The best goal you want to get to is by the end of your 2-year work permit, not having to renew it, having you have permanent residence already. What that does is just for your future in Canada, if you get permanent residence in year 2 or 1.5 years in, you now obviously have the right to work for any Canadian tech company you want, any Canadian company in general. It's the ultimate freedom. Well, I just see someone had dropped out. I'll let them back in. So you want to get started on that process for permanent residence, and you definitely want to talk to one of the professionals here to help them guide you. In terms of permanent residence, as I mentioned, you should be able to get your Canadian PR by the time your work permit expires after 2 years, either express entry. There's also provincial nominee programs. So some people, what they do is they reach out to one of the immigration lawyers. They ask for advice. They're like, hey, look, I'm in Ontario. Hey, I'm in British Columbia. Sometimes a province may have something unique, a way to get you permanent residence faster. As you always say, talk to the experts here. They're going to help guide you and they're going to help steer you in the right direction. Before we step away from work permits for immigration, I just want to see if anyone has any questions at the moment. All right, we'll jump over to social insurance number. Again, if anyone coming from the US, this is just like a social security card. This is the legal number that will stay with you. You need this legally to get paid in Canada. There's a link here to some of the documents you'll need to apply. You can start working. It sounds kind of bizarre, but Canadian immigration has an expectation. You land in Canada, you start working that first day or the next day. But there's a difference between starting to work legally and getting paid. So you can start working immediately. What you want to do is there's going to be a quarantine period. It could be a few days. You have to check. There's a link down here there's going to be a link later on to talk about the COVID requirements. They change weekly. I mean, with whatever new variant, things are changing all the time. But you want to find out how long the quarantine period is. You're going to obviously be testing negative to come into Canada. All those requirements will be sent to you from the immigration lawyer. But the moment you're out of that quarantine, on that first day, you have 2 places to go. And the first place you're going to want to go is physically go into an office. And one mistake we've heard people make is they go into the office and they don't ask or push for the temporary SIN card. They hear someone say, oh, it'll be mailed to you. The challenge is it could be mailed to you in 2 months, which means you don't get paid for 2 months because you have no legal documentation to prove that that you have a SIN card. You have to be very pushy to ask for the temporary number. You bring that back, you pass that to your employer. It's going to allow you to get paid. Then the official card comes 1 month, 2 months later. It'll show up eventually, but you definitely want to make sure you have the temporary SIN card. It's critical. Jumping over to Canadian healthcare. From the US, I had the expectation, I'm like, oh, I heard Canadian healthcare is free. It's all paid for by the government. And then I showed up there and you figure out, no, it's not. What it's basically paid for is your doctor and hospital visits are paid out of your personal taxes. So when you show up brand new in Canada as an immigrant, you haven't paid taxes, you can't tap into the system yet. So what you have to do is cover, in the next slides, we're going to talk about private healthcare. You're going to, that gap until you qualify in your province you're living in, you want to make sure you're covered by private healthcare, then you'll be covered by your province. So provincial healthcare basically is doctor and hospital visits. The majority of companies in Canada, they'll offer what's called supplemental healthcare, vision, dental, disability, better prescription drugs, et cetera. That's paid for by your employer. Again, there's a bit of a gap until that kicks in. So if you're with Syndesus, that's going to kick in maybe 30, 60 days later, and you cannot access it until in parallel you have your provincial health care. So what is the solution in the short term? You're going to want to get private health care. So there's a bunch of programs in place. You're a new visitor to Canada. The programs are, we'll show you a link of where you can find that healthcare. You definitely want to have this in place. Do your research so that when you get into Canada, that you're taking care of this either before you get in or right when you get in. There's coverage for you, family members, all of that can be covered in the short term until you're onto your employer's healthcare. In terms of private healthcare, there's a couple slides here basically showing some of the details of what's covered, what's not covered. Again, we're going to show you, we'll send this link to you so you can dive into this a little more deeply. You don't want to cover all these steps here. There's a few things of what's not available. There's always health conditions that may preclude you. In terms of private healthcare, there's options in terms of having no deductible, having a deductible. You're going to want to read through this. The important piece we want to say is find coverage, get this set up so that you come into Canada, you're covered until your provincial and supplemental healthcare can take over. I'll stop there to see if anyone has any questions so far.
Yeah, I think that depending on the company, they also provide as the onboarding package the private healthcare option, if I'm not mistaken.
That's something you definitely want to ask about, Hugo. So some companies will, their understanding is some of the companies we work with, people they're coming from outside Canada are new to them, so they don't automatically think it. So one thing you can always do is you ask your employer, hey, is private healthcare covered? Maybe they say, hey, look, it's Manulife. Hey, it's Sun Life. They may offer a suggestion, but they also may say, Hugo, it's like, no, it's not covered yet. You should be able to ask them, can we get reimbursed for this? Because they're in the short term until it happens. It's also another question you want to ask is, if you're paying for that out of pocket, can they cover that? And in a lot of cases, they're going to say, well, of course, because you're not covered under our main healthcare package for a gap, 30 or 60 days. We definitely want to ask the question.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Short-term housing, I learned this the hard way. So anyone who goes to a new country, you can look online at Airbnb and say, hey, this apartment looks really cool. Or you can look at, before Airbnb, you can say, hey, these apartments are cool until you're actually in the city. So I lived in Toronto in multiple different apartments. When you're there, then you start making judgment calls on what's close to the subway, where's the streetcar? Or maybe you think, I don't want to be on the subway or streetcar. I don't want to be on public transportation. There's a bunch of choices you have to make in terms of getting a permanent apartment. We always say, go for the Airbnb first. Even if you could, instead of 2 weeks, better to do it for a month. Scout out the city, whether you're in Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, wherever you're going to end up living. Use the Airbnb an option, quarantine there. From there, gather all the information you need to do on where the best place to live is. As soon as you're in that place, share that with Syndesus or Path to Canada, where you're at. Immediately, we want to have that information recorded to help you out in any way possible. There's a real estate agent here that covers Toronto. We're going to add this presentation one that covers Vancouver for anyone that's moving there. What the real estate agent basically does is they give you access to multiple listing. Basically, it's the apartments that may not be available on Craigslist. I learned this when I moved there. I went to Craigslist right away, and then a friend of mine introduced me to the real estate agent. I'm like, oh wait, they have access to places that are about to come available. They're much better connected than what you can do online. They won't charge you for any service. They're just going to basically help you and say, here's the websites to go to. Down the line, you're looking to buy a house, or if you're looking to buy a house right when you get to Canada, again, Stefanos can help you. I've known Stefanos for almost 15 years. Great guy. Bank accounts, the second thing you want to do on your first day. So first day, you're going to go to the government office to get your SIN card, to get registered. Almost when you walk out of that office, the next thing you want to do, this slide's about Royal Bank of Canada. There's 4 big banks in Canada. All of the banks have banking programs for new immigrants to Canada. This one's just profiled here. What you basically do is you call this number. Before you get to Canada, they're going to walk through how to open an account. I called this number several months back to test this out. What I was pushing them on is to understand, okay, I'm about to come to Canada. Can I wire money and be set up? And very quickly on the call, they said, no, you can set up a bank account with us, but you cannot fund it until you're in Canada. You walk physically into a branch. On that branch, you're going to show them your passport. You're going to show them your work permit. You're going to have your address information. They're going to see all of that. They're going to say, now we're going to open the account for you. So that gets to be a bit of a challenge of you're still going to have your banking outside of Canada. You're going to have to leave that in place. Once all this is set up, day 2, day 3, day 4, depending on when your quarantine is, then you can transfer money, wire money in from your account. Then you're going to have funds available to you. There's also the Newcomer Bank websites listed there. They have other services to help you get set up. Basically, RBC and the other banks, they know that you're new to Canada. They're trying to win your business. They're trying to make it easy to get set up with them. They're going to give you additional services. And they're also going to help you with starting to build credit. The challenge is when you walk, you could have excellent credit in the US, you could have excellent credit in India, you could have excellent credit in Pakistan, wherever home is. The moment you get to Canada, you start all over. They won't be able to reference your outside credit. You're going to have to start building credit again. This slide talks about how to bring money into Canada. Again, you have to have the account first. There's limits into how much you can wire in. You're going to want to check all that information out first. But all this comes back to have the account set up as fast as you can. Once you get to Canada, then you can start bringing money in. Some people also looking at this saying, I want to bring cash in just in case. Again, there's limits. You bring in more than 10,000 cash in, you have to declare it. No one wants to walk around with that much money on you. Always remember, if you have at least if you have a US credit card or international credit card, you can always use that in Canada. They're just going to translate it to local currency. They usually give you a decent exchange rate, but having a foreign credit card is not going to help you build credit. it's something just to keep in mind that you want to have cash on hand for the short term, but you want to quickly convert to being into the Canadian financial system as fast as you can. So that's just a note here. Again, you can use your US credit card. I use my US credit card. It took me a while to realize when I was living in Canada, you're not building any credit in Canada. You're not getting started. So you basically want to use the card to get around, but quickly translate that to a Canadian credit card and start building credit and using the Canadian card as much as you possibly can. And again, the banks that give you RBC or Bank of Montreal, all the banks that you work with, their goal is to give you a credit card and get you started because they're looking for you to be a long-term customer in Canada. I'll stop there to see if anyone has any questions.
Maybe not so much of a question, but I think that some banks in the US allow you to, like, for example, to purchase or trade your American dollars to Canadian dollars. So I guess that for outside in the US, we can also do that, talk to our local bank, to trade some money so we can actually bring Canadian dollars into the country.
You can, yeah, you can do that. So you could go to your bank, and I used to do this in the past. I would get the US to get the exchange rate and bring in, because you may want to have a few $1,000s with you. But it's a good point, Hugo, that you can, and I've done this before. You can go to an ATM machine at the bank at the airport when you land. You put in your US credit card to the ATM, you put your PIN in. Of course, you're going to pay a transaction fee, but you can pull Canadian dollars out of an ATM machine anywhere in Canada. There's just fees for doing so. The better approach is to bring some cash with you, but you always have the option to take your US credit card, your US ATM, walk into any Canadian bank, it'll recognize it, they'll just hit you for a big fee, but you can get access to Canadian dollars.
I wanted to say really quickly, going back a bit about the healthcare side, provincial healthcare, just that because of COVID right now, some provinces have removed some of the eligibility requirements. So as of right now, I believe, and it may change when you come over, if you're coming to Ontario, the waiting period is usually 6 months, and that's been waived. So you can apply immediately. So please, like, as you're coming in, just check the eligibility requirement of your provincial healthcare at the province that you're moving to, because you may be able to apply sooner than you had originally expected.
Thanks for mentioning that, Hadon, because COVID changed a lot. So we used to get questions, people saying, oh, COVID, the border with Canada was closed. And we'd say, actually, Canada left the border open to students and work permit holders the entire time of COVID. It may take longer to get a work permit, but they left it open. Just as Hadon said, when it comes to healthcare, they're like, we're not going to let you wait, 6 months during a pandemic. They sped things up. There's just different changes that have been made. And I'm also going to cover the worst case scenario, you've probably been informed this, but just to put your mind at ease, especially if you're moving to Canada for the first time. Some of you experience the downside of US immigration. You're coming from outside of North America. Canada was very clear when COVID hit. Their immigration ministry, their immigration policy was people come in on work permits. Maybe the company does a layoff, something goes wrong. You're holding a work permit. The US talked about expelling people. Canada never did. Their approach was, okay, look, there's a pandemic. You came in here. If your job didn't work out, you have the right to stay in Canada. You find another employer. Well, obviously, we would help you with that. All these things to say is Canada, there's just a lot of fairness. There's no other way to say it when it comes to immigration, especially with the immigration overall, work permits overall, especially during COVID. Mobile phones. As I found out, you can use your mobile phone, and then you're going to get your US phone. If you're coming in, a global phone, the roaming charges will be extreme. So what I've done is I travel across the border. Well, I used to until COVID. I used to go to be in Canada once a month. If you're coming from the US, just call your carrier and say, can I please add a Canada plan for voice, data? They'll add that on. For all the carriers do that. It's a short-term fix. And we do some suggestions. Some people are saying, hey, use your old number as a Google phone. So current communications still work. These are the 3 providers in Canada. You can basically go to Best Buy, Wireless Wave. These are all big box stores. You can go there and just ask for plans and see which one's the best. Also, you can look online for options. I have detailed TELUS. I had a call with them. I'm like, what happens when someone shows up? And they're like, oh, no credit in Canada, $400 deposit. And when you walk in to open it, so make sure you have that SIN number. They said, bring the SIN number, bring your Canadian bank account, bring your passport. So it's SIN number first, then bank account. On the third day, then you could, if you had your temporary SIM card, then you could go get your phone. Their response was, keep your current handset. We're going to mail the SIM card to you in a week. Here's a contact with someone from TELUS. She handles people across Canada. Over time, we'll give you more selections. We don't want to steer you in one direction or another, but this was one approach. We want to say, like, this is what it takes to get set up in Canada. We just want to give you some background. I'll stop there to see if you have any questions. We're down to the last few slides.
I just want to add that I think if you're opening a prepaid phone plan, then a SIN number is not required.
Then you just pay for like buy a throwaway phone or a plan or a prepaid plan.
Yeah, we can use the existing phone, but we can buy a prepaid SIM card without the SIM number.
That's good to know. So we have to add information on that. Thanks for sharing that, Chaitanya. There's so many different options when you come in. Yeah, just letting you know there's multiple ways to do this, but as fast as you can do it, you want to transition again. Everything's about transitioning to Canada and letting go of whatever you had in the past. So in terms of getting paid in Canada, as we mentioned earlier, you're expected to start working very soon after your arrival. Your work permit's just like first day, start working. Again, you want to take care of the SIM card, your banking information, so you're passed on to your employer. You want to share that with you. The fourth bullet's here because this is the worst case scenario. We had someone who crossed in, they went to get their SIN number. They did not ask for a temporary SIN. The person said, oh, we're going to mail this to you. It showed up about 2 months later. And the employer's like, we have no SIN number, we can't pay you. Again, if you ask for the temporary SIN number, you push for it, they should give it to you. I think there was a miscommunication. Maybe the person said, oh, it'll show up in the mail in a couple of weeks. Again, that's just to cover the worst case scenario, have access to funds for a couple months so that everything's okay. We just want to make sure we cover the worst case scenarios. And then depending on before arriving in Canada, let Syndesus or Path to Canada know the city you're flying in, flight date, arrival. And then if you'd like, take a few, just for what we're doing is the people that are coming into Canada, we are a picture or two, we'd love to have a conversation with you after you come in. We are trying to promote, there are many people out there in the US or globally that don't know the option for Canada exists. They watch a testimonial, they see a YouTube video, they see the examples of any of you coming into Canada and saying, hey, look, I've got my work permit. I'm on my way to living the Canadian dream. Maybe things didn't work out in the US. We want to share those stories because those are the most powerful things we can communicate to other people who don't know this option exists. So yeah, that's what he says, take a few selfies if you want to share those, we'd appreciate that. But definitely want to have the information, knowing if you're flying in. One of the reasons for that, one of the things we're trying to help out is we're trying to have a car service waiting for you. We've had people arrive at midnight and they're sitting there, it's outside, it might be a bit cold, might be very cold, depending on what Canadian city you're flying into. We want to make sure that we can do things to make your arrival to Canada be a lot smoother. In terms of work prep, all that information of like your flight information when you're coming in, you share that with us, but also share that with, if you're Path to Canada, if you're using Path to Canada to come in, share that with your employer. They also want to know because they're thinking, how do we get you your laptop? How do we get you provisioned? There's a few things they want to help you with to get started. So again, those are things you want to work out. The more information you can share ahead of time. With Syndesus, it's easy. If you're coming across, you're just bringing your laptop from the US. Nothing's going to change. But if you're joining a Canadian company for the first time through Path to Canada, we definitely want to make sure that we have that information because maybe they have it waiting at your Airbnb. Maybe someone's going to drop it by. Again, we want to work out all those details for you. And then last slide basically is some entry requirements into Canada and some quarantine information. In the last 30 days, I've been to Canada twice, Vancouver and Toronto. There is the number 5 here, ArriveCan. There's an application, it's an app on your phone as you're trying to check in at the airport. They're right away checking it. You get into Canada, they're asking you to hold it up. You upload your vaccine information, your passport information is uploaded there. It's just something unique to Canada, but they're usually the immigration law you're working with, they're going to have all this stuff mapped out for you. So they're going to tell you what kind of test to take, how many hours before. We're just kind of saying to be prepared for that, but all of that's going to be, you'll be informed of all of that right before you arrive, so you have a smooth arrival. Last slide, I will open it up for any questions anyone has on the process or anything that I've shared so far. It's always a good sign if there's no questions. There's a lot of information that I've shared, so I'm taking it as a good sign of, okay, Hugo, go ahead.
Yeah, in some of the slides during your presentation, you mentioned about the quarantine. I don't know if that still applies, like if you're fully vaccinated or your family is fully vaccinated, or just in case, it's better to prepare to fully quarantine.
I think it's a just in case. So I'll give you the example, like for the last 30, and when we're putting these slides together, the immigration lawyers we're working with, they're like, come on, everything changes every week, Mark. Are you Delta, Omicron, like, do you really want to cover every contingency? I'm like, it's a good point, Hugo. There was no quarantine for me coming in from the US because I could show vaccination proof and a negative PCR test within, I think it was 72 hours. I showed up, they're like, come on into Canada. And then I went, the first day I was there, I was doing meetings. So there was no quarantine coming from North America. But I know some of you on this call, one of you on this call is coming from India. So it's different by country. So I would say if you're coming from North America, there should be no quarantine. What I don't know is if your vaccination status, if you don't have that, you can still come into Canada, but are they going to make things different? Again, it changes all the time. So it's a fair point. I didn't have that coming in. It doesn't mean that's going to be your experience. And it used to be, if we were rewinded to January, we had someone come across in January, right when COVID was raging, and he had a 14-day quarantine. So basically couldn't go get a SIN number, couldn't get banking information. There was a whole quarantine plan when he came in, basically went to his Airbnb, hunkered down there for 14 days. A couple of people who came in earlier this year would say, yeah, that was how it was. And then all that got wiped away. Doesn't mean it couldn't be added.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish some of these things were as straightforward as they used to be pre-COVID. It's just a different world now. If no one has any questions, definitely get back to the work you had this afternoon and this evening. And as I mentioned, we will send a recording of this out so all of you can see this in depth. And even when the recording gets sent out, as always, a question comes up, something doesn't seem clear, please reach out to us. We're definitely here to help you with this transition as much as we can. Cool, and definitely thank you all for your time. I appreciate the chance to meet all of you. And my plan, as always, is as I'm traveling to Toronto or Vancouver over time, I will definitely be reaching out to all of you to see if we can meet up at some time. Again, COVID restrictions permitting and safety permitting, but definitely would like to meet all of you in person when I have the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, like as Mark said, like all the links are in the slide deck, and I put it there purposely so that you can always research on your own as well as things are changing. And then you can either email me, my email's in the slide deck, or Jazz. If you're in contact with Jazz, with Path to Canada, like he's a great guy. He's more than happy to help you out as well.
Cool. Thanks, Adon. And thanks all of you for joining us this evening. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.